It's the 2nd of August 2020, and the good news is that the reproduction number in Delhi has gone down to 0.66. This means that if 100 people are infected by this Chinese virus, then they transmit it to just 66 people. So obviously the virus is waning now in Delhi. Similarly, in Mumbai and in Chennai, the reproduction number is hovering below 1. So there is some optimism for all of us. I highlight this fact because I personally feel that Delhi has hit what is termed herd immunity, despite the fact that last month only 25% were found to be seropositive. Another serological testing will be done, I think, this week in Delhi. So we will have new figures, and one can presume that the numbers would have increased. But apart from the antibodies which we are making, we also have the T cells, which also contribute vigorously in protecting us from future infections with the Chinese virus. Now, we are also hurtling towards the vaccine era. Now, this can be a very turbulent period because it has been found that a lot of people are very skeptical about vaccines in today's times. A CNN report has informed us that more than 50% of respondents had great resistance to the COVID-19 vaccine. Similarly, in almost 25% of French people, there was skepticism about the COVID-19 vaccine. And also in England, almost 30% are inclined not to take this vaccine. Now, the reasons for this are many, but the biggest contributor is possibly the media, not necessarily the mainstream media this time, but the internet. We have these documentaries, and particularly there are two documentaries called The Vaxxers 1 and Vaxxers 2, and which have highlighted the very many problems of vaccines and have generated a lot of mistrust about vaccines. Now, it must be kept in mind that no vaccine can be 100% effective, no vaccine can be 100% safe, and sadly also we cannot vaccinate every living being on the planet. And no government in any part of this planet can provide us 100% safety. Now, having said that, I will have to talk about some of the problems linked with the vaccination. The biggest one was an article which was published in no less a journal than The Lancet in February 28, 1998 by a gastrosurgeon called Andrew Wakefield. So Dr. Wakefield, along with 12 more co-authors, published a small series of only 12 children. Their ages ranged from 3 to 10 years. The mean age was 6 years. Of these 12 children, 11 were boys. But the big thing was that the paper suggested that there was a link with the MMR vaccine, that is the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, with autism. Now, this created a storm in the medical world, in fact, on the entire planet, because now people were very worried about the MMR vaccine in particular and vaccination in general. And very soon, the measles vaccination dropped in England from 91% to just 80%. That means only 80% of children were accepting the measles or the MMR vaccine. But soon it was found that there was a lot of fraudulence associated with this particular article. It was realized largely by the work of a very good investigative journalist called Dear. Now, Dear was writing for the London Times, And it was Deere who exposed the fact that the lead author of this article, Andrew Wakefield, was already, while doing the research, on the payroll of a law firm, in fact, a lawyer called Richard Barr. Now, Richard Barr had paid Wakefield at least £55,000, maybe per case or altogether, to dig out data connecting autism with the MMR vaccine. Also, of the 8 children of these 12 in the series who came down with autism, of these 8 children, 5 children had parents who were litigants, who had already filed a suit against the MMR vaccine company. Now, when this was informed to the co-authors, they got very worried, and they decided to withdraw from the authorship of this article. And eventually, after 12 long years, this article was officially retracted by The Lancet in 2010. Now, the problem was, apart from having serious conflict of interests, the big problem was that these little children, as young as 3 years, were subjected to colonoscopy, were subjected to lumbar punctures, MRIs, and also biopsies. And an association was made that the vaccine produced bowel disease in these children, which was called a chronic colitis. Plus, 8 of these children developed autism, and a strong suggestion was made that the autism was because of the MMR vaccine. A lot of studies came out later, and which have seriously found no link between autism and the MMR vaccine. But still, people are extremely skeptical. Now, apart from the Wakefield saga, we also have bits of information. For instance, in the 1960s, there was a vaccination program against the respiratory syncytial virus. And the vaccine, instead of protecting children from the respiratory syncytial virus, actually aggravated the situation. In the early 2000s, there was a vaccine made against Lyme disease. This landed up causing, in some people, arthritis. There was another vaccine against the swine flu disease, which in a very few people resulted in narcolepsy. So what we are seeing is that undoubtedly vaccines do have some side effects, even in a very, very small proportion of people. So one has to be very careful with the not the swine, but the COVID-19 vaccine. Because if, after all these billions of pounds and dollars which have been invested on the vaccines which are being developed now, if the vaccines are found to be ineffective, there will be a massive loss or damage to trust between the public and health services, and vaccination in particular. And if the vaccines produce side effects, then again there will be a huge turmoil in the process of vaccination. It will be very difficult to convince people to be vaccinated for COVID-19. Now, what is the situation right now? The situation is that there are some companies, at least 4 or 5, who have done phase 1 and phase 2 human trials, and who are already in the process of doing the phase 3 trials. Phase 3 trials will involve thousands of participants to see whether this vaccine is effective and whether it is safe. Now, very distinguished people, I won't name them, but very, very distinguished people have been saying that the COVID-19 vaccine, as other vaccines, is tested not in a randomized fashion and is not compared to placebos. there's another narrative, and that is the coronaviruses. The vaccines for coronaviruses, when tested in animals, created massive deaths or horrible side effects in these animals. Now, I don't think there is any grain of truth in these allegations, because now we have animal data which has been published. We have the Oxford vaccine animal data, which was the vaccine was used in monkeys, and it was found that the monkeys after vaccination developed robust numbers of antibodies, and these antibodies, if not effective in preventing future infection, certainly prevented the development of serious lung disease. So therefore, the makers of the vaccine, that is AstraZeneca, they have publicly said, as also the vaccine experts in the United Kingdom, that we may have a vaccine which may not prevent the China virus from penetrating, but which would most probably prevent serious sequelae and complications of COVID-19. Now that is the situation right now. AstraZeneca has gone ahead with its phase 3 trials. Even those trials will be done in India. The number of participants, I think, are about or more than 30,000, and we would have the data in a few months' time. So we have now a vaccine which has been employed or tested in animals. Moderna has also published a paper just 3 or 4 days back in the New England Journal of Medicine. Once again, they have tested this their vaccine on monkeys. They took 12, in fact, they took 24 monkeys. Half of these were males, half of these were females, and found that after 2 shots of their messenger RNA vaccine, all the monkeys, the vaccinated monkeys, developed robust antibodies. Now, not only did they develop antibodies, they also developed T cells. Now, this is good news. And the other good news is that the vaccinated monkeys did not develop any serious inflammation in their lungs after challenge. So what they did was that they gave 2 shots of the vaccine to these monkeys on day 0 and after 4 weeks. And then after another 4 weeks, they challenged them with the virus itself, and then showed that within 2 days, there was no presence of virus either in the nose or in the lungs in the vaccinated group. The vaccinated group was given 2 doses, 25 micrograms and 100 micrograms. And the 100 micrograms made sure that there was no vaccine either in the nose or in the lungs. Whereas the 25 micrograms vaccine showed that there was no vaccine in the lungs, but there was virus in the nose and no virus in the lungs. But I don't know how much would 100 micrograms in a monkey be translated to a human being, because the Moderna data on the phase 1 data on humans clearly showed that the high dose, the 200 micrograms people who were vaccinated, 15 of them, of these 21%, I think 6 or 7 developed serious side effects which required hospitalization. But of course, the phase 1 trial of Moderna did show that despite the fact that quite a few, almost 70%, did develop mild side effects, the vaccination was able to produce neutralising antibodies, which one presumes would prevent future infection. And that is about the Moderna phase 1 trial. I have already spoken about the phase 1 and phase 2 trials, which were combined by the Oxford University AstraZeneca group. This was done in 1,100 participants. Once again, of those who were given 2 jabs, 100% developed neutralising antibodies, and all of the participants who were vaccinated developed T cells within a fortnight of the shot, the first shot. So we find now that we have enough data. We have data in animals. The Oxford vaccine was not compared with a placebo. But there's another study which was published simultaneously in the Lancet, I think on the 20th of July, 2020. And this was by the Chinese health authorities combined with a Chinese company called CanSino. And this was also a phase 2 double-blind placebo-controlled trial, which showed that the participants who were given the vaccine, and this was a DNA vector vaccine, all the participants developed neutralising antibodies, and all of them developed T cells. So now we have adequate data that these vaccines have been tested on animals. The efficacy, or rather the development of antibodies has been confirmed. We have phase 1 and phase 2 trials with these vaccines in human beings, wherein again it has been found that the vaccines are quite safe, and also that they are developing adequate antibodies against the Chinese virus. So I will leave it at that. I don't want to elaborate on the different types of vaccines. However, what I would like to emphasize is that both the United Kingdom and the United States has invested billions of pounds and billions of dollars into different vaccine companies. For instance, England, I think, has put in money into 4 vaccine companies. One, of course, is their own Oxford University AstraZeneca. They have also invested in a French company which is making inactivated vaccines. It has also invested in Pfizer, which has combined with a German biotech company called, I think, BioNTech, which is also making a messenger RNA vaccine. And they have also recently made a deal with GlaxoSmithKline to prepare a vaccine. The reason for this is that in case one company or one vaccine fails, they would have some vaccine or another vaccine which would work, because there is no time now. You see, there has been massive demolition of economies all over the world. Economies have shrunk by 30 to 35%. And when they say officially that they have shrunk by 35%, well, I would presume they have shrunk more than that. The GDP of the US will go down by, I think, 10%. It would be the same with England. Even our GDP would definitely go down by 5%, below zero. So we are looking at shattered economies, demolished economies across the world. The only choice we have now is that we have to come back to some kind of normalcy. We have to face the virus. We have to understand the virus will not disappear. It will not go away in the next few weeks or the next few months. It will be around us for quite a few years, maybe for 5 years also, maybe for 7 years or 8 years. And the only way we can combat or live along with this virus is by accepting the fact that we have to prevent its penetration into us by doing these simple maneuvers of washing hands, cough etiquette, wearing a mask in a crowded place or in a closed place, particularly in the hospital setting, and of course maintaining some space from people. Now these are simple measures, and I'm sure we can all do that. We will wait for the vaccine. We still have, you see, as they say, there's many a slip between the cup and the lip. We still are not absolutely certain that the vaccines against this virus will work. And if they work, to what extent will they work? And most important, whether we will be confronted by serious side effects of the vaccine. No one knows for sure what is imminent or what will be seen in the future. But we have made considerable strides in managing this virus, and that is the reason why the mortality in hospitals has shot down from 6 to 7% to just 1.5%. The mortality in Indian hospitals is also 1% or just a little bit over it. The reason is maybe the virus has become less toxic, maybe the virus is less virulent, but there is also a huge probability that we are now more aware of how to tackle the virus. We have some sort of a protocol to handle the virus. And the protocol which is being followed in India is very simple. If a person is found to be symptomatic, if the person is having mild symptoms, then it is just mere supportive therapy. In case the person becomes breathless, has a lot of cough, persistent cough, and is found to have a low oxygen, which is coming down from below 93%, then one supports the person by giving oxygen, by a nasal cannula or by a mask or by BiPAP, and also try the prone position, that is, you make the person lie flat on his belly, because that expands the lung and makes the work of the lungs easier. And of course, at the same time, once the patient is in requirement of oxygen, then we have a randomized trial which has been shown to reduce mortality by using dexamethasone in a small dose, which can be given either orally or by an injection. And so DEXA can be tried. And of course, we have data on antivirals like remdesivir, which has been found in a randomized trial to reduce the viral shedding from 15 to just 10 days. The dosage is about 200 milligrams on the first day, and then 100 milligrams for the next 4 days or 8 or 9 days. The longest duration of treatment is 10 days with remdesivir. So, if a person requires oxygen and early on, during the symptomatic period, one must employ DEXA with an antiviral. Once, if unfortunately, and this will be seen in very few people, if a person develops a hyperimmune response, also called a cytokine storm, then it is time to try tocilizumab, which is an interleukin 6 inhibitor. And how do you pick up these people? One is by symptoms. That means the person keeps on demanding more oxygen, the body requires more oxygen, the person keeps on coughing, and the person stays breathless. And apart from that, we have some markers. We take blood samples, we look for what is called CRP, that's a protein, we look for ferritin, we look for LDH, and we look for D-dimers. There are certain threshold values. If we see that these values are going up, then we have to be on the highest alert as clinicians and be prepared to use tocilizumab in these people. The values some papers have suggested are that the LDH is more than double the normal value, CRP is more than 10 times the upper value, ferritin exceeds 1000 nanograms per mil, and D-dimer goes above its normal value by 10 times. So, ladies and gentlemen, we now have good news coming in bits and pieces, but we have positive news coming in. First, by all the efforts made by the general public, the infection is going down in the city of Delhi. We have drugs at our disposal which have been proven to be effective and also to reduce mortality, to improve symptoms. And we are moving very fast on to developing a vaccine. We cannot be over optimistic here. This has to be borne in mind that we may not have a vaccine which is 100% effective. We may not have a vaccine which is 100% safe, but we are moving towards that. In our own country, we have 2 or 3 vaccines being researched upon, being developed. We have the local vaccine, the inactivated vaccine by the Bharat Biotech company from Hyderabad. We have the Oxford vaccine, which will be tested in Pune and in Mumbai by the Serum Institute. And then we have a virus by Zydus, by Cadila, which I think is a vector, which is an adenovector-borne vaccine, which has already been tested in animals, and the phase 1, phase 2 trials are ongoing. The news from India is that the Indian vaccine has been found to be reasonably safe. The word used is encouraging. And this is from the Rohtak Postgraduate Institute. They have, the director has reportedly said that the results of the Indian vaccine, the killed or the inactivated vaccine against the Chinese virus is encouraging. So I will leave you at that, and I will again emphasize that despite the doom and gloom, not only about this virus, but also about vaccination, we have to keep our minds open. It is mandatory, it is imperative that we do our own research and we read up on these problems of vaccination. We have to keep an open mind. We cannot side with the anti-vaxxers just because of a whim, nor can we go the full hog with the vaccinating group. A book which I must recommend right now is a book called Stuck by a scientist called Heidi Larson. This book is available. It is available as a paperback and also as an ebook. This is a good book which has studied vaccination comprehensively, and especially it talks about in great detail about rumors on vaccination. Now, I will leave you with this bit of information for today. Thank you very much.